I mean, what major hiccups happened when you were there?
Only the fact I got shot, that's the only hiccup really. I used to hear about a few odd things, like the Koreans capturing Viet Cong and throwing them out of helicopters and things like that. Interrogating and throwing them out if they didn't get the right answers. Well, again, not knowing anything about drugs at the time, we were told there was cocaine and that sort of thing there. Then you could see they were high as kites on something. So I just assumed cocaine must have been what it was about. Quite amazing, because you always think of a bullet going to be painful, and this wasn't really painful, just the leg went numb. So it must hit a lot of nerves in there, which it did. It sort of travelled from here up to the top of the, and actually nicked an artery on the way through.
Thank you for giving us your time today. The archive wouldn't exist without your time, so thank you very much.
That's okay.
I'd like to start off today by asking if you can tell me where you were born.
I was born in Adelaide.
And where did you grow up?
Based in Adelaide. Mm-hmm.
But roughly when did you enlist in the RAAF?
1963, it was 10th of January.
And where did you do your rookies?
Rookie training was done in Wagga.
And roughly how long was your rookies?
Rookies only basically 3 months training. Then you go on to do in our case it was a TM course, which is a technical mechanics training course.
And how long was the TM course?
That was about 6 months, I think, initially.
And where did you do that?
That was in Wagga. Then we go on from there, went to do electrical serviceman's course, also in Wagga.
And after the electrical fitting course?
I went to Edinburgh. Spent about 18 months there, approximately.
And after Edinburgh?
Posted to Butterworth, Malaysia. And from Butterworth went to Vietnam. And then that was about 10 months there.
The year that you were in Butterworth in 66?
Yeah, that's right.
And Vietnam was 67?
7 to 68, yeah.
Okay, so you went to Vietnam in roughly April 67?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. So it was about a year for that tour?
Yeah, about 10, 11 months, I think. Mm.
And when did you leave Vietnam?
March 68.
And that was repatriation back to... Oh no, sorry, it wasn't repatriation, it was just coming back to Australia?
No, I actually had to come back, medevac back to Australia. I did actually go to Butterworth, back to Butterworth to be, had a specialist look at my leg there, and then he said I need to go to Sydney to have an operation.
And after you recovered from that operation, did you return to Butterworth?
Yes, I did.
And when were you discharged from the RAAF? Or when did you retire?
Yeah, it was January the 9th, 1969.
And why particularly the Air Force? What about other services?
Well, I thought no to the Army because I was singing the foot sloggers all the time and not so much of the excitement side of things. And Navy, well, yeah, you spend a lot of time at sea too, I suppose. I'd rather be on land, and yeah, Navy, the Air Force appealed to me. Yeah, the aircraft generally.
And for you, from what you're telling us today, I'm just wondering, because you were fairly career motivated, but what about the other motivation for enlisting to do with serving your country? How influential was that in your mind?
I never thought of along those lines as serving for my country, like defending the country, because at the time there wasn't any conflict. I was looking more as a job than anything else. And so, you know, that really didn't come into my mind at the time. about serving for the country. Even though I knew obviously there was a problem it could be involved, but that didn't worry me generally.
And did you want to be a pilot?
Oh, initially I thought I could try for a pilot, but the qualifications weren't there. Any going to intermediate wasn't really high enough, and whether I had the reflex actions, I'm not sure either. So to fly a plane, but yeah. But there again, those days I think the pilots didn't have to be that top notch either. They were sort of aircraft weren't that sort of sophisticated. So, but they certainly became more sophisticated in that period of time I was there.
Well, I've seen pictures and film of the typical kind of obstacle course, but can you tell us about some of those physical tests that you had to go run through?
Yes, we didn't have much in the way of those courses. They seem to be more of the army orientated things, but we certainly did. The competition of running 3 or 4 Ks or something. Oh, what else did we do in those days? A lot of long marches and that type of thing, endurance type things rather than... and then of course being in a gymnasium we'd have to do all this running across the inside the gym, doing the exercise at one side, then run back the other and do the exercises there. And this is going for quite a while. So you're sort of trying to notch up more than the guy next door, so to stay in front of him sort of thing. Yeah, it's quite a bit of physical work for 3 months. Yeah.
And when you moved into the technical mechanic course, what were you working on?
Well, there were a couple of old aircraft I used to just trot around with. I'm not sure whether they were meteors or something, I'm not sure what they were, vampires or something. But there was a couple of old bits and pieces of aircraft. It wasn't really a complete aircraft, it was just putting faults on the aircraft generally, things like that. And
what did you do in the technical mechanic course?
Well, that was just the generally filing and education and general technical work, handling of tools and just getting used to being around equipment and using drills and all that sort of thing. Yeah.
And what did you find the most interesting about that course?
TM's course, I didn't think that was interesting at all, really. It wasn't, because we hadn't got into aircraft at that stage. We were just using, that came the electrical serviceman's course that was around aircraft. TM's course was pretty basic and nothing really exciting.
And after the technical mechanic course, moved on to electrical service mechanic, still in Wagga.
Mm-hmm.
And what was in that course?
Well, that's when we're getting into aircraft and equipment they'd use in aircraft and the type of... there was more. This is all sort of, you're now getting into electrical stuff rather than anything else, and anything to do with aircraft electrics was discussed, and just some people didn't. It's also a electrical course in itself without aircraft, so you had to go through the electrics as well, learning about electricity.
And what were your highlights of that course?
Well, I think it's the first time we got to be around aircraft, working with aircraft. So that was probably the highlight of it. It felt like you're getting somewhere in the course, getting something to do with the Air Force, in other words, rather than just handling tools and things. You're now tied up with aircraft.
After electrical service mechanic, you then went on to Canberra. Was there any graduation from either of the technical mechanic or electrical mechanic courses?
Was there any, sorry, what was it?
Any type of graduation or accreditation?
Yeah, well, they just called us electrical servicemen, and then they called us electrical fitters. So after the electrical servicemen's course, we had to go off the base and do 6 months with on a base, an actual working base. So we went all over Australia doing different, went posted different parts of Australia, doing on different bases. Then spent 6 months, and we all came back to Wagga again to do an electrical fitting course.
So, where were you posted?
I was in to Canberra, not very far away from Wagga.
How did you feel about going to Canberra?
Oh, I didn't mind it actually, because I never thought of going to Canberra, and Canberra had the helicopters, which appealed to me anyhow. So I thought that was quite good, and it was a VIP squadron as well. So we had to do a few, what do you call it, when you have the VIPs come, we all just stand to attention and do all that sort of rubbishy stuff. But the helicopters were good. That was exciting. We got to go off the base, Lake George and those places. They do exercises there. And you bring the aircraft in and out and helping the pilots into the choppers and things.
So at the end of your training, was there a graduation or any ceremony?
No, that was just that was it. You qualified and away you go. So give you a posting. We were all posted all over the place. I came to Adelaide, and which I wasn't real happy with. I prefer to have gone somewhere else. But so you put up with it. At least wife at the time we got accommodation quite easy at Elizabeth, so that worked out quite well.
And so by now Vietnam was starting to come on the agenda. And what were the rumblings around the base?
That was, what was that, 1964, I think. So 64 or something. There wasn't a lot of talking about it, as far as I know. I can't remember, because you never sort of expect you're going to be there. It just, the army hadn't even been allocated that time. I think they didn't go there till about 65, so Vietnam was another world to us then. It wasn't sort of discussed. So Malaysia was a bit of a conflict even then. It was still had their base there, and that was sort of on the end of any problem. But they did have a few confrontations up there.
What was the real appeal about going to Malaysia?
I think the climate, the different way of life. The fact you could buy things a lot cheaper there, and the money was, you get extra money for going there, extra allowances. All those things combined.
So, I mean, they were skirmishes as such, and it wasn't as big as what was going on in Vietnam, but you were still heading into a conflicted area.
Yeah, war zone sort of thing. Yeah.
How did you feel about that? What thoughts did you have on that?
I didn't really think a lot of it. It didn't really worry me. I wasn't sort of worried about it. I just thought we'll sort of cater for it or cope with it when it happens. And we're sort of being an Air Force base, you're fairly well protected. And from what we'd heard, the private houses weren't sort of in any danger at all, anything like that. No.
So how did you prepare for your trip to Malaysia?
Well, we packed up all the wrong sort of clothes, of course, the heavy clothes, we didn't need them. And put our stuff into storage, or the furniture and that into storage, and it was all paid for by the Air Force. And
how much notice were you given?
I think it was only about a month or something. It wasn't long, so it wasn't too difficult, but it was all right. We had to have our inoculations and passports organised, things like that. Maybe longer than that, I'm not sure, I can't remember.
And when you went over there, did you go over in uniform?
No, civvies. We actually had a couple of days in Sydney to see some friends there and stayed there in Sydney with them before we went. And flew out of Sydney in a... did we go to Qantas? I think we were at Qantas. Yeah, we were at Qantas, I think. They were there. We were all in suits and things when we went there. So, stinking hot when we arrived and couldn't wait to get our clothes off.
So what were your first impressions when you landed? Where did you land, actually?
In Butterworth. They landed in Butterworth. We had to go via Manila, because of the conflict between Indonesia and Malaysia. We had to go via Manila, around Indonesia, and landed in Malaysia, and of course the temperature was extreme. It was that time of the year, excuse me, and so we just thought it was like a wet blanket, hot wet blanket being thrown over top of us when we arrived.
And what squadron were you with now?
It's called 2 Squadron.
And what was Butterworth base like?
Yeah, very very pretty, really, as far as the trees, coconut trees and palms or whatever. Yeah, well laid out, well maintained, looked after. Yeah, it's quite good.
Well, going back to Butterworth now, what planes were you working on there?
Butterworth was Canberras and Dakotas again. Dakotas were used for VIPs up there, and also used as freighters. And they were doing supply drops as well, which is the 3 main areas of Dakotas. The Canberras were used on bombing situations and been pilot training for future bombing exercises.
And were there any choppers at Butterworth?
No, there wasn't actually, not at the time, no. There may be an odd one or two, but not. They were sort of visiting, they weren't actually stationed or based there.
And back to the base, what was your daily routine?
Again, maintenance of aircraft, the same thing, servicing and maintenance. And in my time there, I was moved to the VIP squadron for about 6 months, I think. And so I did a bit of flying with them. I went up to the Malay-Thai border on a couple of occasions, or probably 3 occasions, and just to parallel generators and just do servicing an aircraft. So it was a fairly quick trip there and back. So I'd sort of got a bit of flying and a bit of work done at the same time.
How did your first stint at Butterworth come to an end? Or why did it come to an end?
Well, the whole squadron were posted to Vietnam. That's what happened. We all left Butterworth, and we arrived there in Vietnam. So.
And how apprehensive were you to be going off to Vietnam, knowing what was going on there?
Well, again, we had missed out on a lot of knowledge, because we, unless you're reading Australian papers and getting all that guff at the time, we didn't probably know a great deal any more than anyone else would know. So we were just we were sort of given this briefing and expected to sort of work from there. There wasn't a lot of knowledge. We're there to fight communism, and that's political rubbish we were given. So.
Well, how did you travel from Penang to Vietnam?
Yeah, we went on a Herc, and the pilots flew the aircraft with a couple of odd guys that went with them. A couple of service people went with them. There was a third dicky seat you can sit in. So a few of them went up with the aircraft, and the rest of us went in the Hercules.
Was that your first ride in a Hercules?
No, I'd been in Herc before. Went from Edinburgh to Sydney, I think, yeah.
And where did you land?
We landed at Phan Rang, and we had a greeting by the Yanks at the time. They had to give us a feed and a bit of a sing-along and all that sort of thing. A bit comical, because I don't think they know what to expect anyhow from us. So. And we were all sort of, I think we're given a couple of beers or something, and we all started singing Waltzing Matilda, that sort of garbage. Yeah, so at least I knew we were Aussies rather than Yanks.
And did you arrive in uniform?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we actually arrived in uniform. We had to carry a rifle with us, which is a bit silly too,
On the plane?
Yeah, don't know why, but that's what we had to do.
And where were you put up or accommodated?
Oh, we had new barracks, brand new. Probably the best on the base, because we had flushing toilets, and the Yanks didn't have any of that. They had no flushing toilets. They had their own cooking facilities and showers and everything else. So. And we built a bar there while we were there, koala bar. So we had pretty good facilities. Couldn't complain about that. But they were a barrack type situation where you had an open plan living of, 20 or so in a hut. 2-storey huts and 3 or 4 of those.
We're in Phan Rang now, and I'm just wondering what kind of operations were happening out of the base.
You're talking about bombing generally? Or?
Yeah.
We're sending out 8 aircraft a day. Night time initially I think they were bombing. And they were carrying 750-pound bombs. I think there was 6 in the underneath and 1 on each wing initially. And I think that was extended at a later date to 1,000 pounds on each wing and possibly even more underneath. I'm not sure what the final result was there.
And still with the Canberra bombers
Yeah.
here, were there any incidents of the hangar? I'm just trying to think how the bombs get released.
Right.
If there was any electrical jamming or...
There was a case of, not when I was there, after I was there, where the bombs held up and jammed up in one, they had to shake them loose or something. Heard some story about that. So.
How do you shake a bomb
Well, I
loose?
think it was purely a physical thing. It must have got hooked up somewhere on the equipment, on the actual support base of the bombs, and just not sure what happened, but shaking them loose is, rather than, you can't land with them there, so they had to get rid of them somehow. So they would just manoeuvre the aircraft, turn it sideways or whatever they had to do to, jolt it off, I think. Yeah.
And was there any incidents where the electricals were failing on the aircraft during an operation?
During an operation itself, I'm sure things would have gone haywire at times. Minor things would have gone wrong. Maybe radio failed, or somewhere in the wrong district they couldn't hear each other. That type of thing. I think I'm unsure what actual failures they would have had. Nothing major that I know of. But I'm sure there would have been minor things.
So from the situation and the operations that you're in, I'm gathering that the pilots and the ground crew would have had a very good rapport.
Oh, they did, yeah. They were relying on us, obviously, to keep the aircraft in the air, and they don't want anything sort of falling out of the sky on them, things like that. Anything breaking down, generally. So, there was a good rapport. We all got on well together, and we didn't sort of call them sir, or they called by each other's first name and so on. So, pretty good. Mm.
You mentioned when we were talking about Butterworth how you found excuses per se to go out with the pilots
Flying.
on operations.
Yeah.
Yes. In Vietnam, what reasons would you go out flying?
Well, you wouldn't normally. You'd be sort of, you'd be a bit dubious about flying anywhere generally. But there was helicopters around. We did fly on the base itself, just different with Americans. We'd fly around a bit with the Americans. And the only other thing which happened to me was the flying in a Cessna Bird Dog, which is a surveillance type aircraft, forward air control aircraft, which looks for damage or also directs fighter aircraft or bombing aircraft onto a site they want bombed, or where the enemy might be seen, and they would direct them into that area and radio in and get them to come straight out or whatever. Mm.
On the base, you said that you mentioned then that there were US Air Force were also on the base. How did you get along with the Americans?
Yeah, pretty good. They used to come to our bar quite often, and there was quite a bit of racism between them actually, between the black and white situation, and there was also quite a bit of drugs involved in amongst the Americans, because we had a couple of major floor shows, and the Bob Hope show and Connie Francis and those sort of shows came to to the base, and you could see a lot of them were drugged out at the time, and but there was a lot of racist comments and call each other, you know, the whites call the blacks boy and look down on them a bit. So I think it was sort of following from the Martin Luther King days. So it was still there.
It's an interesting observation that between seeing the race split in the US forces. Did you see any conflict with that?
Yeah, there was one. It was basically a bit of a knife fight and a punch up in our bar that occurred. So, and they were both banned, obviously, from now on. But there was generally sort of a reasonable sort of conduct there. They weren't getting drunk generally, but it's you know, apart from that.
Did you notice a difference between the way the black servicemen approached their work and the white servicemen approached their work?
No, because we weren't working with them, but they obviously noticed the race problem was there towards them, and I think they actually preferred to come and drink with us and drink with some of their own people. So we treat them quite well. So
when you say they, who are you referring to?
To the white American, yeah. We treat them, in some cases, pretty badly, yeah.
Sorry, who would prefer to come and drink with the Australians?
Well, they'd all prefer to drink with us, but we preferred, I think, in a lot of cases, the Negroes to be there. They seem to be quite good. But there again, there's some great white guys as well. So, but there was conflicts there.
I'm also interested about that comment you made about the drugs. And from what you could see or could sense, what drugs do you think were available?
Well, again, not knowing anything about drugs at the time, we were told there was cocaine and that sort of thing there. Then you can see they were high as kites on something. So I just assumed cocaine must have been what it was about. And
I find that fascinating because I'm trying to think how could they possibly be in operations and you know, working in a war zone under that kind of...
Yeah, that's right. Well, I wondered that myself, like, you know, maybe they're in their time off period when they're doing it. I can't be sure. But certainly in the recreation area, that's when I saw them in that condition, so I'm sure plenty of others did too. So.
And where would you get cocaine in Vietnam?
Well, again, can't be sure, but the understanding is the CIA were bringing it in, but that's, again, is another possibility, but that's what we were told.
It's a pretty big conspiracy that the CIA are feeding their own troops.
Yeah, well, paying for their own war, I suppose. Yeah. They're the sort of conspiracies that come up, but who knows what the truth is.
Now, you mentioned the Koala Bar. Now, I understand that that's a bar that you built while you were...
Well, basically, that hadn't been finalised when we were there, but we were sort of... I think the structure was there. We had to do the interior work and set it up with fridges and, you know, sort of thing. Supply tables and chairs. And it's all done out of money that we sort of poured in through drinking there, and then eventually got to the stage where we could eventually drink for nothing. So there was booze supplied from Australia and things like that, and in a lot of cases no charges have been involved.
See, that's an interesting point as well. Alcohol on the base, and how often were men drinking?
Pretty often. Yeah, it's. I'm sure it was probably more than we should have been drinking to be sort of sober the next day, even though you get to work all right and everything seemed to be okay. But on a normal situation, probably say shouldn't have been drinking that much, you know. So there's plenty of being drunk, yeah.
And can you describe the Koala Bar for me?
Oh yeah, it was this. How big would it be? I suppose guessing again, 40 feet wide, probably 100 feet long, sort of thing. It's a fair size. Had a bit of a stage up one end and a bar down one side.
And how many men could fit into the Koala Bar?
Oh, quite a few, yeah. Probably 200, quite easy, yeah.
And you mentioned You mentioned some of the shows that came through.
Yeah.
Did any Australian artists come through?
Yeah, quite a few. Those shows were basically, most of them were outside, and but we did have an odd one or two in the koala bar. Yeah, they were just localised, and they were making money by doing a tour with the Yanks as well. They were doing shows for them and getting paid for that. Do our shows for nothing.
What do you remember about those shows?
Well, people like Little Paddy and Bob Francis came up later. I wasn't there when Bob Francis was there, but there was shows like Lucky Grills, he's a comedian. The ABC bands, major bands came up at the time and entertained us. They always had a singer of some sort. And, I think it was Big Pretzel, one of those was there, doing a usual act. But quite a few people that are well known in Australia, yeah.
Now in Malaysia you had locals working on the base there.
Yeah.
Were locals working on the base in Vietnam?
Yes, they were, yeah.
And what were they involved in?
Well, a lot of the guys hired girls to do their washing and laundry and that sort of thing. And men were involved in cleaning and working in, and the girls also working in the cafeteria or the mess, general cleaning jobs and things like that. They had all sorts of various jobs they were doing.
And they were called hut girls, I believe.
Yeah, we called them hut girls, yeah.
And did you have one?
No, I didn't. No, I did my own washing. Had to fight to get the washing machine at times.
Previously we were talking about this off camera, but it's an interesting point to raise. With the locals in Vietnam, there was a lot of suspicion behind who was BC and who wasn't. What kind of security check would you do on the locals?
Well, I wouldn't know because the security people were doing that, but I'm sure they'd have to be just questioning generally. I mean, what else can they do to ask someone how they feel about things, I suppose, whose side they're going to be, looking after. But there again, if they get a lie, they're not going to know the answer to that. So who knows? I'm a bit unsure how they went about that.
And were there any Viet Cong amongst?
Yes, we found out at later stages they were involved in, after hours bombing and raids or whatever on the base because they were perusing the base to know where to come in and what areas to bomb and that type of thing.
Could you describe for me what the raids were and the bombings were?
Well, the raids actually started about the time I left, believe it or not, so I missed that sort of thing. But they had rocket launchers sort of thing landed near the huts and so on. So, but I wasn't there at the time, so I'm not sure exactly what happened.
Popular culture has created this very trendy and hip image of Vietnam, with music and the drugs and everything. How true is that image to what you saw was going on there?
The music and drugs? Yeah, well, I agree with that. I mean, drugs were certainly there and progressively seem to be getting worse. And the music, there was entertainment nearly every night if you want to go and play poker machines if you wanted to over the American base. And there's also things like PBX stores to buy anything you wanted to buy. And a lot of people bought stereo equipment and things like that. So there's plenty of noise going on at night.
And Phan Rang had a strip as well.
Yeah.
How far away was the strip from the base?
I think it was only a mile or two off the base. I'm not 100% sure of that. So that was pretty easy to get to, yeah. And
describe the strip for me.
Well, it was a combination of massage parlours, brothels and cabaret-style bands there. You can get a haircut there or whatever, yeah.
What were your first impressions when you actually got to Phan Rang?
Well, the size of the Air Force Base was probably impressive, and how the Yanks operate is impressive. They've got everything done on a big scale. They have their pilots and so on tend to show off a bit with their Phantoms and things they were flying at the time. And at night, they'd take off and put the afterburners on and just sort of do vertical climbs and let off a stream of flare out the back, or flames out the back. So yeah, they used to do things in a big way there. Yeah.
The American aircraft was quite different to what the Australians
Oh
were
yeah, they're
flying.
much more advanced, and yeah, but they weren't necessarily more efficient, because they sort of their bombing was probably less efficient than the Australian bombing, because the Australian used line of sight in daytime bombing. So they were very efficient because it was low level bombing, so they didn't miss their target too often.
And did you ever get to maintain or get into the mechanics of the American craft?
No, not at all.
So what involvement? I mean, obviously, as a mechanic, you were quite in awe of the planes that they were flying.
Apart from the aircraft, they had an aircraft similar to ours, which is probably they were nowhere near as efficient. They sort of, I think they had 17 to 20 odd aircraft, and they'd be lucky to get 6 of them in the air at night, whereas we had 8 and we'd fly 8 all the time. So theirs seemed to be dripping oil and falling apart, and ours seemed to be, but that was a very old aircraft for them to have, where ours seemed to be quite efficient. Seemed to go all the time. So the Yanks, apart from those very old aircraft I was talking about, which is like ours, everything else seemed to be much more modern and much more functional and so on. Did
you ever get what aircrafts did they have there?
Well, I think that's Super Sabre F-105s, I think they're called. The Phantoms, and I don't know whether they got the F-111s weren't in there. No, they had other aircraft which I can't remember the names of, but they're all sort of more modern and up to date.
Well, what did you know of the war that was going on?
Oh, well, we had our bombing aircraft, obviously, going out every night. Their bombing aircraft and flying out all the time, and we had Gatling guns hanging around the perimeter, clearing the perimeter of anyone sort of trying to get on the base. So just bombing, firing Gatling guns out of a Dakota at night. Just clearing the area generally. So if anyone's around, they're going to get shot. So we see that sort of thing going on all the time. There's always bombs being exploded at night and things like that.
And how often were the Australian bombers hitting on target?
You mean how often they were flying out to do it?
No, how often were they hitting on target?
I think their efficiency was very good, as far as I understand. That's what I read in books. They say very much on target. Yeah, they won the Proficiency Award in Vietnam at the time for their efficiency. So must have been pretty good.
And what damage were you seeing coming back from their operations?
There was odd bullet holes and that showing up in aircraft. This again happened later. There was a couple shot. I think one never came back. Another one was badly knocked around, and they ejected and were found and rescued and so on. But that all happened again later than when I was there.
Well, I mean, what major hiccups happened when you were there?
Only the fact I got shot, that was the only hiccup really. No, that was pretty quiet up to that period of time. That was really the start of what they call the Tet Offensive, which is early 68, and I was shot in 68, so early 68. And from then on, I think there was a lot of action going on. That particular year, I think, was the start of their major offensive by the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong. They were setting themselves up all around the place to with their rocket launchers and then grenades or whatever.
So where were the operations bombing then? What parts of Vietnam?
Well, mostly South Vietnam, but they did actually go into North Vietnam as well, even though they weren't supposed to. They did bomb in North Vietnam, apparently. They were supposedly bombing in South Vietnam. They were sort of defending area positions where troops would be in trouble. They go in and bomb the area and called in to do it late. They might be on their way to another mission even, or another sortie, and diverted from that to go and bomb somewhere else. So all that type of thing was going on.
So how much did the ground crew actually know about the operations?
Not a lot. We'd hear about it afterwards, but it wasn't a lot of conversation. We'd just sort of get it through the grapevine. But we did have an intelligence officer who was giving us sort of rundowns on what's happening in the overall war. Supposedly we were winning all the time, and in the end result, I found that wasn't true.
Well, how accurate? I mean, at the time, I'm sure you believed what they were saying.
Mm-hmm.
And what was he saying?
Well, telling us things like this so-and-so area has been bombed and so many killed and whatever. And, driving back this force here and doing this over there, and making us feel like it's all, we're well in front, and a few days before we can go home. But in reality, it was just. I think they're sort of keeping us happy generally. Yeah.
Well, when you did start to see some displeasure coming through in the press, and you're still on the base, and you're still undergoing operations, and you think you're winning the war, what does that do to the morale of the men?
Yeah, I suppose people would have to think what's going on here, who's telling the truth, and why we're really there. That's the sort of thing you'd say to yourself anyhow. What are we doing?
Did you ever question why you were in Vietnam?
Yeah, I certainly did after coming back and finding out more about the truth of the matter, the political side of it, and working out the reality of the war.
But at the time while you were there?
No, at the time I was there, I probably still didn't click on who was telling the truth and who wasn't, and what was really happening. We sort of thought we were doing the right thing, and because we were told to go there, and so we did.
Well, just going back to the locals, what kind of interaction did you have with them?
Didn't have a lot to do with Vietnamese locals. There wasn't a lot of English being spoken with them, because not like Malaysia, they nearly all speak English of some sort. The Vietnamese very broken and didn't have a conversation with them really. You just sort of say hello or wave to them or something. That's basically what it was about. They used to wander through our showers when we were having a shower and do all sorts of things, strange things. Use our toilets and everything else. So, but they're the only sort of close contacts you had.
And in Phan Rang, when you were going down the strip, I mean, were you given any warnings about what was going on down there, or any of the locals? Or
well, I think you always had to be wary. You knew you had to be wary of anything unusual happening, or make sure you're not on your own if you can help it, and things like that. You had to sort of stick with a group, and most people did anyway, for obvious reasons.
And for the locals, how could they tell if you were an Australian serviceman or a US serviceman?
From a distance, because we were always in civilian clothes off the base, and the Yanks are always in uniform. So that was one easy way of deciphering.
Was that a choice to be in civilian clothes?
No, I think we're advised to, actually. I don't know if that's really... I think they preferred us to be in civilian clothes rather than service clothes, yeah.
And for the Americans, was that a choice?
I don't know about the Americans. I think they only had the uniform, as far as I think they had to be in uniform, yeah, as far as I know. Don't think I ever see them in civilian clothes.
It was this was a war zone,
yeah.
And it was the first time you'd worked in a war zone. How would you describe the pressure you were working under?
Daytime seemed to be good. Nighttime is always a little bit. You knew at odd times that there were people trying to get on the base, and which did happen when we were out there at one stage. We could hear the firing shots being fired, and the people were running towards the airstrip where our revetments or our aircraft were all up one end of the airstrip, and that's where they're heading for, that area. This is sort of early hours of the morning. And we'd hear the guards. There was a guard on top of the revetment with his two-way radio, and he was talking to the guys who were actually shooting at these Vietnamese and listening into what he had to say. So we knew they were heading our direction, and we hear the shots and yells and screams and carrying on. So for that reason, you had to be wary. We had no weapons out there, so we had to rely on these guys defending us. So that was a bit hairy. Yeah.
How many were there?
Oh, running on the base? Not many, I don't think. You know, there's only a handful probably, but I can't be sure. They never tell us the numbers. But you hear them saying, I got one, I shot this one, I got this one, or something like that, you know. And so you're just not sure how many.
So what was going through your head when you could hear all this going on around you, and you've got no weapons?
Yeah, well, we're all sort of saying, oh my God, you know, what do we do now? And we knew our aircraft were due to come back, so we couldn't go too far because they were relying on us anyhow. So we hung around and worked out anyhow, so didn't go anywhere.
What could you use for self-defence?
Nothing really, nothing. It was all just flat tarmac, and there was no stones to throw at them, anything else. Yeah.
Well, what kind of training does the Air Force give you for situations like that?
Well, that's true. We don't, you know, normally if you know they're coming, you'd have your rifle, because all the rifles were stored in the hangar, obviously, and we would have our rifle at least to have a shot with it. But in this case, they never know, so they expect the opposition never get on the base. This is probably their thinking, so they think, well, we're pretty safe, which we were. Generally, we're pretty safe. So.
What other skirmishes or minor attacks did you see when you were there?
I used to hear about a few odd things, like the Koreans capturing Viet Cong and throwing them out of helicopters and things like that, interrogating and throwing them out if they didn't get the right answers, and that type of thing you'd hear about. And the Koreans are a fairly stern crowd. They didn't get many smiles out of them, so they used to, we went over their base a couple of times, but never got to speak to them really. Had a beer and that's all. And there was a couple of cases they were teaching karate, things like that, a couple of our guys. So there's a little bit of contact, but not much.
And what was their base like?
A bit hard to remember. It wasn't much. It was only smallish, I think. I don't know what their numbers were, but it wasn't a big area. Mm.
And was there a bar on base?
In the area? Yeah, there was, I think. I'm pretty sure there was a bar there. But, yeah, I'm sure we had a drink with them, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah. There was a bar.
What other armies were around you?
We had the American 101 Airborne Division. And we had American Army as well. There's probably wasn't a great deal. We had American Air Force, American Army on the base. Quite a big number of Air Force. The Airborne Division is really the army that flies out of the sky, if you like, dropped from parachutes and things like that. There's quite a few of those there.
So aside from the US and the Korean armed forces, there were no other nationalities near you? Or?
No, not as far as service people go, no. There was a few private people on the base, like us. I came across a Filipino, and I don't know whether he was just what he would have been in catering maybe or something. I don't know what he was. So there would have been a few odd private people around the base.
So Peter, just talking a bit about Happy Valley, and you were just telling us off camera that it was your first time or encounter with people on drugs. Why was it strange for you?
Well, I was a bit shocked really to sort of, you've heard about drugs, but you don't know how it's affecting people or what effect it has. So to see someone sort of totally out of it without any control, yeah, just quite amazing, I suppose. And this is prior to I think it was the Bob Hope show when I first saw these people. And they were all in a group, and they were all sort of high as kites. And, yeah, so it was a bit of a shock.
And how did you know they were high as a kite?
Oh, purely because it wasn't alcohol. You know, I've seen alcoholics, people on alcohol before, and these guys were really doing totally different things. You know that.
What were they doing?
Well, I think their eyes are rolling and hands are running around the air, and they were sort of gazing into no man's land, and didn't seem to have any control of what they're doing with themselves. Yeah.
And how connected was the nickname of Phan Rang as Happy Valley? How connected was that, do you think, to...
Oh, no, I think that was just because basically there had been no action there at the time. It was just a quiet base and hadn't been attacked, you see. So all this is where it's got its name, Happy Valley. Whereas
not connected to the drug thing?
Oh, no, well, not from my point of view it wasn't. But that would have happened in all bases, I'm sure of it. So that was purely because it hadn't been fired on at the time.
And how much was drinking a problem on the base?
Yeah, I think it became a bit of a problem. I think there was quite a bit of drinking going on. Where you'd sort of, you'd be drinking most of the day and just flop into bed at night, sort of thing. Yeah, plenty of that going on.
Well, it's interesting getting a picture of what the base was like. Why was it that you loved watching the Phantoms take off?
Well, it's you never get a chance to see those things again. Obviously, the power of those things and the noise level and the flames, the flames would be blowing out the back, all at night. Very spectacular. Yeah, it was quite amazing. And there wouldn't be just one, there'd be two or three following each other, and they'd all do the showing off bit and do a roll up in the air or whatever and carry on. Yeah. The accident will show off that way.
And the Phantoms are the Mirage?
No, Phantoms are different aircraft than Mirage. Mirages were in Butterworth, but they weren't in Phan Rang, no.
During lunch we were looking at your film footage. I'm going to ask you, what's a revetment?
Well, that's just a protective area for the aircraft, an individual protected area. So if a bomb or a rocket dropped in those revetments, it would only destroy that aircraft, not spread to destroying any more. So it was quite a thick metal and filled with concrete protective area, height of say 15, 20 odd feet. Yeah. In enclosing all the aircraft individually. Yeah.
And when you were not working on planes, what tasks did you have to fortify the base that you were on?
No, we didn't have to worry. We had our own defence force, airfield, what do they call them, airfield defence guards or something. Is that what you mean, defending the area?
Or sandbagging?
Oh, yeah, we did sandbagging, that sort of thing. We had to build our own protective bunkers and things like that. So,
and where did you build those bunkers?
Built between our huts. Yeah. And they're almost enclosed over the top, if I remember right. Sort of fairly thick and heavy.
And how many people was it designed to fit?
Well, I'd say you'd quite comfortably fit about 40 people in each, quite comfortably, I think. Squeeze in a bit, but you'd get in there. And there must have been, there's probably at least 4 of those built that I know of. Yeah. Could have been more built later.
Well, sandbagging is sometimes a job that you get as punishment.
No, you'd think so, but no, it was a voluntary thing, and you're obviously quite happy to help out because you may have to use the things too. So, and no, it's just a matter of filling the bags, and you'd spend a couple of hours a day if you get through.
Well, what work were you doing getting the craft ready for night raids? When would you do that work?
Oh, see, one shift would be doing the aircraft, preparing the aircraft through the day, and the next shift would be sending them out at night and bring them back in the morning, depending on the distance of time and hours. Sometimes there'd be a shift change. I'm not sure if we had 2 or 3 shift changes now. Probably 2 shift changes in a day, that's right, and one shift would be on leave. I'm not sure how that worked now. Anyway, we'd send them out at night and bring them back, and next week you'd be doing the day shift, which would be the maintenance and that sort of thing on aircraft.
And was there a better shift, or were they both the same?
They're both nice to try both out. They're all still the same area, but I think the aircraft going in and out was a bit more exciting probably, because you actually see them being loaded with the bombs during the day, and you see the pilots coming back, have a bit of a chat to them and how they got on, see how they sort of had any problems, or the bombs got away all right or whatever. So all those things are taken into account. So night time was probably a little bit better, night and mornings. And we have a steak about midnight, go down the cafeteria, they cook something about midnight, and get back in time to see the aircraft come back in again. They feed it all these bodgy hours, because you sleep in daytimes in those situations, so you'd be eating at night. So the cafeteria, the catering be going, cooks would be going all the time.
So the most activity was morning and then night again, or?
The morning they're coming back from raids. This is when they're doing night bombing, and you're sending them off at night. So say at 8 o'clock at night, the first one to go out, you might come back at 2 in the morning or something like that. They come back in a staggered situation. So you slowly put them out and they'd slowly come back 3 or 4 hours later. It gives us time to handle them and get them into their revetments, and the next one to come in, you start fueling that one, next one to come in, you do the same until they all come back.
And how you mentioned refuelling was one of your jobs.
Yeah.
How much fuel did a Canberra take?
Oh,
just approximately.
Yeah, I really couldn't sort of tell you now. I'd have to sort of think about that.
What sort of job was it to refuel?
Well, it wasn't really our job, but I mean everybody took that job on because it was just part of helping out. It was really nobody's job, I suppose. Yeah, it was just a thing that I don't know if the airframes or the engines are supposed to fill them up, but they've got other things they've got to do as well. And some of the guys would bring the aircraft with a tractor, and they'd have to tow them and push them into revetments, and so they're all sort of jobs that some guys would take on. Just an extra job.
And would you refuel when it was actually in the revetment or before?
Yeah, in the revetment. Mm.
And how would you get the fuel in?
Oh, the hose would fit over the top. It was sitting up the top. The hose would extend that far, and they'd just come in towards the wing, and the hose would fit quite easy. There were two holes at the top to refuel. So you fill the front one first and the back one later.
So you'd bring the fuel to the plane?
Yeah, the tankers would come to alongside the plane.
Well, you mentioned a bit earlier that I understand you volunteered as a spotter in a Cessna bird.
Mm.
Tell us about
Cessna,
that.
A bird dog, they call them, yeah. Well, they were looking for people to help them spot outside the perimeter, which is American. This case was American Cessna bird dog, and other guys had gone out prior to me. It was on a bit of a list of people volunteering to go. Your day off, something to do. So I just happened to be one of the volunteers that put my name down. And apparently the guy, the day before me, they had been shot at, but not hit, or the aircraft wasn't hit. And then my following up day was the day that I went and copped a bullet. So.
Well, we'd like to hear in as much detail as possible about this incident. First of all, what sort of plane was the Cessna Bird Dog?
Well, Cessna being a two-seater light aircraft, and the Bird Dog was a style or name they gave that particular aircraft. I don't know why. It was just a name tag they put on that aircraft. It was a certain style, I think. And yeah, I can't tell you much more about it than that. There is a number for that aircraft, like it's a certain number. It's in the book over there. But
And you mentioned it was two-seater. How were the seats positioned?
yeah, one behind the other, straight behind the pilot, in line.
And what sort of communication was there between front and back?
Yeah, they had your headphones on. You could hear what he said, and he'd switch on to you if you wanted to, which he did. There was a bridge that had been blown or part blown away, and he used to ask me what it thought the size of it was and the style of bridge and things like that. And he, sort of said to me, "You'd notice anything that looks out of the ordinary, let him know." And generally in general communication.
Well, tell us the area that you flew over.
Well, it was a sort of mountainous area. There were villages spotted around the place in between, and terrain was sort of pretty rugged where we were. And that's when obviously the Vietcong, wherever was setting up their things like their rocket launchers or whatever they're installing, obviously ready for this Tet offensive. So that's what his job is, to try to find anything like that that's going on, so they can call in the bombing aircraft to blow them up. So that's why we're sort of out there a couple of hours, I suppose.
And what could you see from the air?
Well, it wasn't that easy. He had fairly high sides, but I didn't notice anything apart from the things he noticed, because he was used to the terrain. Things had actually changed. This particular thing he did spot is where he dived on it, and he fired a rocket, just a smoke rocket, and they were firing back at the time, and that's when the shot hit the aircraft, and they were obviously aiming at him probably rather than me, and bullet came from under the seat and hit me in the leg, so smashed a bit of the aircraft around. So.
Well, tell us about that moment. What was it like being hit?
Well, I wasn't sure that I'd actually been hit, because the leg sort of went numb. The numbness in the leg was the thing that quite amazing, because you always think of a bullet going to be painful, and this wasn't really painful, just the leg went numb. So I must have hit a lot of nerves in there, which it did. It sort of travelled from here up to the top of the leg, and actually nicked an artery on the way through. So, and lucky because it didn't sever the artery, I'd be dead. But yeah, it was just a thing that sort of went numb, and not a lot of blood. It was, and he asked me, he said, "Oh, you're okay? You've been hit?" And I said, "Well, I think so." I wasn't really sure. I felt the sort of jolt in the leg, and I wasn't sure what was really going on. Until I put my hand down and felt blood there, and I knew there was something wrong. I actually felt something travel inside, but it all happened so quick, I just thought, oh, must have been a bullet. So, yeah. So he just straight away called in the couple of F-105s, and they come and strafe that area and bomb that area. And we went head up back to the base and to the hospital.
So when you say he called in, who did he call in?
Oh, I called in the American Air Force, which are these Super Sabres, a couple of Super Sabres, to drop a couple of rockets there or whatever they're going to do, and blow the area up. Get rid of these people. They were there in a short time, probably. They were already on their way before we got back, so it wouldn't have taken them long. And we were only sort of 3 or 4 mile off the base at the most, maybe less than that.
So, well, part of your job when you were going out spotting was to take some photos?
No, not really. That was just I took a movie camera with me just in case I could take something that might be of interest, that's all. I had to take a rifle with me, obviously, and just in case you were shot down or something, if you're still alive, at least you can use a rifle. So that's what we had to do.
And were you wearing a parachute?
No parachutes. Yeah, there's no way of ejecting into those things. There's low level as well. We're flying very low level, so it's you wouldn't have time for a parachute to open.
Well, you say that the pilot immediately called in some reinforcements. What evasive flying action did he then take?
Oh, this happened in a dive, so obviously he pulled straight out of the dive and headed off out straight away and went up high as he could at the same time. And he was also worried about structural damage to see if there was anything that we noticed that would have caused the aircraft not to be able to land properly. And neither of us could see anything major, so it was just a clean hole shattered underneath the aircraft in my seat I was in and sort of splattered there. So we couldn't see any more damage than that. And so they had the fire brigades and ambulance there and waiting for us when we got back, and just in case there was any crash landing. And everything was alright, we landed quite normally. No problem.
And what sort of ill effect did you have immediately from your wound?
Well, nothing that was really sort of nothing. I felt no pain really. There was very little pain, and the doctor looked at me and he couldn't see anything really wrong with me at all as far as he was concerned. I didn't seem to have any. He said I didn't have any stress factor from it, but I think internally I was sort of stressed out. No, there was no real sort of major damage to look at as far as that goes. Yeah.
But sorry, so the bullet had dislodged or
no, it was still inside.
in...
Yeah. And that's when they did an X-ray, and obviously they had to they patched it up and thought, well, it can stay in there as long as it's not going to do any damage. You see.
Well, where were you taken?
I was taken to the Air Force Hospital, USAF Hospital, and they didn't. What they didn't notice was the artery had been hit. They didn't actually feel that pulse of blood spurting from the artery, and so after about 6 days, they'd patch me up and send me back to work. And of course, the leg, because of the bleeding, the leg kept swelling all the time. But on stand, it would just swell up with blood. And the doctor there then said, well, you know, you have to go. You're due to go back to Malaysia on a holiday anyhow. So while you're there, go and see the specialist down in Butterworth, which I did, and they said, well, no, you've got to go to Sydney to get this repaired. So they sent me down there and to Macquarie Street, and they took quite a large piece out of the leg, which is a piece of shrapnel, and there's still a lot of bits and pieces still in the leg. And they fixed the artery up, and well, went back to, instead of going back to Vietnam, went back to Butterworth, because they're all starting to be discharged from Vietnam then anyhow, from then on. Next lot we're going to go up there.
And how disappointed were you to leave Vietnam?
Oh, I wasn't disappointed. I think I'd too much had had enough anyhow. And I certainly wanted to get back to Butterworth to see wife and the child. So I was quite happy to go back to Butterworth. They put us on the visiting aircraft situation, which is was ideal because we were working something like 24 hours and then 48 hours off. And that 24 hours we'd probably only do 8 hours in here. So we had 8 hours on and then the next 48 hours off. So it was quite, and that was really a bit of R&R, I think. I think that's what the idea was. And anyone who'd been in Vietnam were all back there working in the same spot. So there's another 3 or 4 of us that, filling our time from Butterworth, had to sort of do our 2.5 years, so that rest of that time was spent there. So it worked out pretty well.
And did you like your time in Vietnam, or?
Yeah, it was a certainly experience, and a lot of fun times, a lot of enjoyment, and seeing something totally different to what you're used to. So it was certainly an experience. But there again, as I say, we were in the Happy Valley situation, so we weren't being shot every day of the week or anything like that. So some of the army guys, we had a fairly lean time that way. But that apparently changed after I left that same year. There was quite a bit of trouble. The base was attacked a number of times, and some of those guys, said they use those bunkers quite regularly, apparently.
Well, what was your recovery period like? Well, first of all, I should just ask you about when you went back to Butterworth. You mentioned earlier on in the day that, you were then incoming wounded from Vietnam.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about incoming wounded at Butterworth?
Yeah, well, that was the Hercs were coming back from Vietnam, and they'd stop off at Butterworth, possibly for refuelling. Not sure of the reason. And there were coffins and whatever in there, and also there's many guys injured with their limbs either blown off or bandaged all over, or that sort of thing. So there's some pretty horrific sights.
This was on the tarmac.
Yeah.
And what sort of impression did that leave on you?
Well, I was shocked when I saw them, and when I could see the look on their faces, I thought they were sort of, they were in shock anyhow, and they must have been thinking like, they're going back to Australia, and they're thinking, well, what am I going to, my family going to see me like that? So.
You're just being very moved then, Peter, I guess reliving and going back to that time. What is it that stands out in your mind most?
Well, I suppose it's more the unnecessary side of it. Yeah. Not good. When you sort of look at the what I'm trying to say is, I think the stupidity of war really is what it's about. And you see a political situation like that, and people getting shot up and killed for no reason really, and then they moved out. So, and those guys are still either committed suicide or dead, whatever. Stop it.
Okay. So after your surgery back in Sydney, you then returned to Butterworth.
That's right.
And what jobs did you have in Butterworth?
Yeah, I worked with these visiting aircraft, which are Hercs and aircraft coming from America and R&R. From Vietnam and R&R, and that was even Pan Am aircraft and things like that. They were flown in. There were a lot of. There was one royalty situation. I think it was Prince Philip or someone like that. Actually, it was Prince Philip. I should have mentioned before, not Prince Charles. There was aircraft coming back from Vietnam, Hercules and things like that, and aircraft from New Zealand. Anything that was visiting or flying through the area would be handling. A lot of RAAF and New Zealand aircraft coming in. So there was, we either refuel them or repair them on whatever. So that was a pretty easy job really. It was just basically they had to send them on their way, fuel them up and send them on their way. Pretty simple. But so it was very relaxing and not a lot to do. We'd probably play badminton while we're doing it, so in between aircraft. not a lot to work.
And how long did it take for your leg to recover?
Well, it's never fully recovered, but I was actually back at work. I think I was 6 weeks down in Sydney, and including time back at Richmond Air Force Hospital there before I got back to Maya, and then sort of, I was swelling up a bit still, and still get pain in the leg even now. So all those things are sort of never fully recovered. But it's not stopping me from sort of hitting a tennis ball or playing a bit of golf. So sometimes I get a lot of pain, and sometimes I get none at all. So yeah, climbing up and down ladders is a bit of a problem at times.
Why is that?
Oh, I think it's probably the fact that if I get a sharp pain on a ladder, I'm likely to fall. Whereas if I'm hitting a golf ball and get a sharp pain, it's only going to send the ball that way or that way. So, so it's not sort of a safety thing.
Well, you returned from Butterworth at the end of 1968.
Yep.
Why did you come back to Australia?
Oh, that was when Posty was. I was actually getting out. They'd asked me prior to that whether I was staying in the services or whatever. So they would have sent me back to the closest base to getting out of the Air Force. Saved them transport fees and things. It was only a matter of days after I got back. It was only sort of 2 weeks or something. Got back just before Christmas, and then got out on January the 9th, I think. I got out next year. So I had to go out to Edinburgh to do my discharge papers, and that was it. They asked me again if I wanted to stay in. I said no, so that was it.
I guess this is a question for today, looking back. You might have felt differently at the time, but I guess hypothetically, if you hadn't been wounded, do you think you might have stayed on?
Well, yes and no. It's I think the Air Force was. I thought I could sort of improve on my life by not staying in the Air Force. Although if I stayed there, I would have just been possibly involved in another war skirmish somewhere else. And I'd been to probably the best posting, which is Butterworth in the Air Force. And I thought, well, I'm not going to get back there in a hurry. I mean, it may end up sending me to Victoria or something. But I sort of hate that. So yeah, so I thought and the kids were. The wife was pregnant again for the second baby, so I thought there was no point in dragging her around Australia, and the daughter was just over 2 years old at the time, so she would have been sort of starting to go to preschool or some sort of thing in the next year or two. So thought it was time to get out.
Peter, I just want to pick up on when you left the Air Force, RAAF. Mm-hmm. What was the decision to leave?
Well, it was mainly decided on the fact that I had been through the best bases and so on, and the kids were growing up. So I thought, I've seen children in the services who moved around a lot, and even those days where kids were fairly well under control, these kids are real terrors. So I thought, well, wouldn't want the kids to turn out like that, changing schools all the time and never know where they were. So I thought, no, get out. Yeah.
And what was the first job you had when you got out of
it? Well, I waited to get into telecom, so I had to wait a while. So I worked with Mail Exchange. Just got a job there overnight, sort of thing, and that was money coming in while I was waiting to go to telecom.
And at the time, politically, Vietnam was a dirty word.
Yeah, it was. Mm.
And having actually seen what you had seen in Vietnam, and then coming back to these moratoriums, how did you respond to that? Yeah, well,
I tended to agree with what they were saying. I think we should have been out of Vietnam anyway. Should never have been there. But the thing that annoyed me with that was we were the brunt of it. Like I was called a rapist and a murderer and so on. So I thumped this guy in a hotel for that reason. So that was sort of probably not an uncommon thing going on. individually you sort of sorted out, and that was sort of 1970 or 71, about that time. And just because you'd been to Vietnam, you know, so I thought, well, got to defend yourself somehow. So that's a lot of people just went, you know, retrograde step and took a step back and sort of never wanted to talk about it for that reason, because I was in trouble. So.
Did you tell many people that you served in Vietnam?
No, I never told anybody unless they sort of spoke to me about it, you know, talked about Vietnam generally, and they seemed to be all right, so I'd bring it up in that circumstance. But I never sort of walked in the hotel and said I was from Vietnam and didn't want to talk to me, nothing like that.
It also took a long time for Vietnam veterans to be recognised by the return services.
Oh, well, that's right, and for that reason, not many have joined RSL anyhow. So.
How did you feel about that?
Well, I felt the same as everyone else, you know. The RSL was sort of had their heads up in the air, and they thought the only ones ever served in a war, and because we didn't obviously win a war, they didn't want to know us. So that's the way I saw it.
And how you had been in the armed services for quite a while.
Yeah.
How did you fall into civilian life? How was that process?
Yeah, that was it was difficult for a start, because back into a routine style of work, and you know, I just felt in a way that a lot of people were sort of, you could see it written all over them, they were bored stiff in their jobs, and they had no adventure in their lives generally, and had done what I saw to be very little. That was a little bit difficult for a start, yeah.
And the Vietnam veterans who are now your neighbours,
yeah,
all would have had different experiences to your
yeah,
own.
Yeah, they did, yeah. Most of them were in the Army, there's a few Navy and Air Force there.
And how did that open your eyes to what was going on in Vietnam?
Well, there was a lot of discussion, because you didn't really know what each other was doing. When you're there, you don't know what someone else is doing somewhere else. So it was a sort of education in a lot of ways, and finding out what other people have been doing or where they'd been, and things that happened to them.
And personally, how did it feel to find these veterans who
yeah, I
pretty
think it was
much
a bit reassuring, actually. I feel that some had been through similar experiences, and some had you know, the same sort of reactions from other people. So it was a bit of a gathering of the troops in a defensive way, in a way.
What parts of your experience in Vietnam were still lingering around?
Well, I mentioned before about the you know, the guys coming back from Vietnam, and their reactions and their faces, and that still stays there.
Did you have any nightmares?
Yeah, I've had flashbacks and things like that. Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask what the flashbacks are?
Well, flashbacks were basically in that situation just mentioning about the faces, and yeah.
And did you have any night sweats?
Yeah, I used to get them quite often. Yeah.
Was there anything in particular that would trigger these?
Well, you'd sort of while you sleep, I suppose, it's always subconsciously there. Nothing seemed to necessarily trigger, as far as I know. Sometimes just, I think because it's always there, you had nothing else to disguise it, so I'd probably come out at night, I don't know.
And when would your flashbacks occur?
Usually like in bed, and you know, you're sort of thinking, generally, yeah. But I've had them at other times too, sitting down.
And we had discussed earlier off camera about post-traumatic stress.
Right, yeah.
When did you feel that you had post-traumatic stress?
I didn't realise it. I didn't know what it was. I thought, you know, I knew I had a stress factor, but I'd never heard of post-traumatic stress. I didn't know what it was. But I had a sort of an anxiety state, which obviously that's what it was anyhow. And it wasn't really until about 91 or something, around that time, I started diagnosing with that sort of situation. Went to the dock, and the dock sent me to the repat, and they sort of tried to wash it off a bit. And I went to another psychiatrist, and he said, yeah, you've definitely got that problem. So.
And how was it treated?
Well, initially with tablets and talk, that sort of thing.
With the talk, were you reliving your experiences?
Yeah, I had to go through that, yeah.
And how was that?
Well, the same as it is now, it really hasn't changed a lot. They tried to sort of help you by, relieving this sort of thing with stress management, that sort of thing, which is breathing, that style of thing. But that didn't work for me anyhow, so, yeah.
We were talking before about how sometimes your legs still hurts. Do you feel that the emotional healing is still ongoing?
Yeah, that's probably going to be there forever. I don't think it's it's been 30-something years or whatever, 35 to 40 odd years since it happened, sort of thing. So it's still there. So that's probably ongoing.
And when it is starting to get tough again, who do you lean on?
Well, you don't really lean on anybody. You lean on yourself, I think, because it's very hard to understand.
We did touch on before one of the very sad signs of the unnecessary death and casualty that comes out of war.
Mm.
How do you make peace with yourself, having gone through the experience?
Yeah, it's probably more like avoidance and avoidance talking about, I think, because I feel a lot of guilt feelings, things like that. Innocent people getting killed and so on. So, yeah, the avoidance of talking about it is one way I do it, Just, and some people, use alcohol and things like that, but I don't know if I've ever disguised it like that, no.
And how do you? What do you do for yourself therapeutically to?
Watch a television or something like that. I mean, to sort of, try to change the subject, I suppose. Yeah. You've got to try something else, yeah. But it's probably less often now. I think since I left West Lakes, where there's a lot of Vietnam veterans around, and the conversations, Vietnam is a conversation piece, not necessarily about the problems, but because I've left that area, I'm probably talking about it less, so therefore it's probably diminishing slightly, yeah.
Some people say that Vietnam was an unnecessary war and we should never have been involved in it. How do you respond to that?
Well, I agree with that, yeah. Well, it was a useless war because you can't fight someone else's civil war. It was, it's interference politically and set up puppet governments and that sort of thing. Just doesn't work. So it's obvious that we didn't have the willpower to fight that type of thing. You can't fight against someone else's wants and needs. You just got to say, well, forget about being there. The end result's going to be the same one way or the other. If you win, then blow the place apart. They're still going to keep coming out of little holes in the ground and fight back. So, and our society is just not used to that. We can't handle that. We're used to the good life, and they're not. So they need to. They're going to live that life until they change themselves. We can't tell them what to do.
You mentioned before briefly that a sense of guilt. What do you feel guilty of?
Well, I feel guilty of the innocent people that killed, died in that war. That's both sides. More so the Vietnamese side, the innocent people, the families and the kids and the women that were napalmed and so on, so very silly.
And when you were at Phan Rang, were you aware that any of this was happening?
Oh, well, I did at that, but in those days it sort of he didn't know to what extent he was supposedly bombing the enemy. Who the enemy was, we don't know either. So, but when you see the photographs later and see the how people were, photographs and movies in the later stage, you see how people were, how they blown apart and so on for no reason. When it's we're in their country, they're not in ours. So pretty gut wrenching.
And when you came home, what was the hardest thing to face about the Vietnam War?
Yeah, I think the people's reaction to us was the hardest thing. I came back reasonably intact, I thought, until I felt those reactions of moratoriums and so on. And then and the way that people were, say, treating me, that was the hardest thing to handle, yeah.
How did your family and friends respond?
Well, that was a mixed thing. They didn't talk about it a lot because they always ask you questions, what was Vietnam like? And you really don't talk about it.
So how long was it before you talked about Vietnam?
Well, never really, except to Vietnam veterans.
What would you say was your proudest moment during your Air Force career?
Proudest moment? Oh, it's difficult. No, I can't really say that I find being proud about it at all. It's sort of prior to Vietnam, I suppose I felt certain pride, but and I think the comradeship and that was good. Early days and plenty of fun and it's good social life. So about pride, well, not enough. I sort of feel that's the other way now. I feel a little bit guilt rather than pride.
Well, from your experience, is there anything that you regret?
Going to Vietnam was one. Yeah, probably overall that's the answer. Yeah, going to Vietnam.
How did your marriage sustain itself during the post-Vietnam?
Yeah, that was a bit difficult because of drinking and general lack of understanding, I think, from the wife anyhow. So she didn't understand. I didn't understand what her problems were either. So wouldn't expect her or anyone else to understand either. So which made it difficult. But the marriage lasted a long time. It was 34 years. So did pretty well. And we're still friends.
And what about the children? How did...
Yeah, they had some tough reactions too, I think, to probably, well, maybe my drinking or my behaviour, whatever it might have been. So they would have they'd have their own feelings about that. We haven't really spoken about it, but I'm sure I still, see them all the time. So, yeah.
And what did you tell them about what had gone on in Vietnam?
I've never spoken about it.
Why did you want to speak to the archive?
Well, I'm not sure why. I thought I might have showed them the movie. I thought the movie might be interesting for them, but really that's not such a great interest. I suppose it's like you have thoughts as to what they should know and whatever, and I don't know what other people are saying. So, and I'm sure we all have different stories and different ways of viewing the whole thing. I'm sure there's so many different variations to that.
What do you think they should know
about Vietnam? Well, I think the feelings of the guilt. And I'm sure a lot of guys have got that guilt feeling. They may not admit to it. I'm sure it's there.
How would you like the men who fought in Vietnam to be remembered?
yeah. You're talking about everyone, or just the ones that died, or
The ones, the men that served.
served? Well, probably more along the lines of being recognised as some sort of, in history as being probably the ones that were sort of used in the wrong war and used the wrong way, and were sort of given the wrong story and about Vietnam and why we're there, and that's probably the most important things.
Well, how would you like your experiences to be remembered?
You mean how they're going to keep the experiences
So
remembered?
if people were to reflect on your experiences,
Oh,
what
right.
do you want them to take away from it?
Oh, just that if you're going to get involved in wars, let's be honest about it, and not just be a political situation. Yeah. Has to be a reason, good reason, to go to war.
And how did your years with the Air Force change you?
Well, probably a lot tougher. And harder, I suppose. Yeah, tougher and harder. Mentally sort of washed out, but yeah, probably tougher. Yeah.
And what do you miss about the Air Force?
I think I miss Butterworth. Sort of miss Malaysia. I wouldn't mind being up there again. Yeah, that's probably the times I enjoy the most in Penang. Good social life and good life in general.
It's just hearing you say that, I find it interesting that the first time you're in Butterworth, you have fond memories, but after
Yeah.
Vietnam,
Yeah,
those memories change.
all downhill. Yeah.
What made Butterworth different the second time round?
Even when I was there the second time, yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose because I was away from Vietnam, that itself was the relief, and the enjoyment of Penang was still there, even though not to the same extent. And I think the environment there was good, so just generally enjoyable area.
And if you were to leave any advice for future generations, what would it be?
You mean rather than getting involved in wars? You mean?
Well, if you were to, I mean, this is a record that you've made of your story and your experiences, and if you were to say anything to future generations about your experiences or advise them in any way about what you'd gone through, what would it be?
War is the last resort, I suppose. That's the thing I would have to say. You try everything else but first. Maybe we should let the politicians fight it out rather than anyone else first.